The October wind carried the scent of motor oil and old leather through the open doors of Callahan's custom motorcycles. Griff Callahan stood bent over the engine of a 1978 Harley-Davidson shovelhead, his weathered hands moving with the kind of precision that only came from decades of practice. Sweat gathered at his temples, despite the autumn chill, darkening the gray streaks in his hair, tied back with a faded bandana. 58 years on this earth and this garage was all he had to show for it. Four walls of corrugated metal on the outskirts of Pittsburgh, surrounded by chain-link fence, in memories he tried daily to forget. The walls were decorated with tools that hung like relics of a simpler time, wrenches and socket sets organized with almost religious precision. Posters of classic bikes curled at the edges, their colors faded by years of sunlight and cigarette smoke, from back when he still allowed himself that particular vice. He reached for a torque wrench, fingers closing around the cool metal, when the sound stopped him cold. Footsteps, light, hesitant, not the heavy boots of a customer or the confident stride of someone who belonged here. Griff straightened slowly, his spine protesting with a series of quiet pops. The wolf inked on his forearm flexed as he wiped his hands on an oil-stained rag, dark eyes scanning the doorway where afternoon light poured in like liquid gold. The girl stood there, backlit and small, a silhouette that seemed to waver in the brightness. 12, maybe 13 years old. Dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that had seen better days, jeans worn at the knees, a jacket too thin for the weather, and something in the way she held herself chin up despite obvious fear that made his chest tighten with recognition he couldn't quite name. She took one step forward, then another. Her sneakers left faint prints in the thin layer of dust that perpetually coated the concrete floor. Griff waited. In his old life before the garage, before the 15 years of self-imposed exile, he'd learned to read people in the silence before they spoke. This girl carried something heavy, something that went beyond the worn backpack slung over one shoulder. Griff Callahan. Her voice was steady, but he heard the tremor underneath like a guitar string pulled just slightly too tight. "Who's asking?" The girl's hand disappeared into her jacket pocket. Griff's body tensed, instinctively, old reflexes from a dangerous life he'd left behind. But what she pulled out wasn't a weapon. It was a Zippo lighter chrome surface catching the light as she held it out like an offering. He recognized it before his conscious mind could process why. The engraving, his name in crude letters etched by his own hand with a pocket knife 20 years ago. "She told me to find the man with the wolf tattoo." The girl's eyes locked onto his forearm, where the ink showed dark against sun-weathered skin. "You're my only hope." The world tilted sideways. Griff's hand shot out to steady himself against the workbench tools rattling at the impact. That lighter. He'd given it to a terrified young woman on a rain-soaked night 10 years ago. A woman clutching a baby to her chest while running from men who meant her harm. "Sandy, where did you get that?" His voice came out rougher than intended, almost a growl. "My mother gave it to me." The girl took another step closer, and now he could see her face clearly. Green eyes that sparked with determination. A small scar above her left eyebrow. Features that hit him like a freight train because they were Sandy's features, aged down, softened by youth, but unmistakable. "Sandy Porter. She said you saved us 10 years ago." The lighter felt impossibly heavy when she pressed it into his palm, cold metal warming against his calloused skin. He remembered that night like it was yesterday, the rain hammering down on dark pavement, the sound of running feet in an alley off Fifth Avenue, Sandy's panicked breathing as she begged him for help, for any kind of help, while four men closed in behind her. He'd done what needed doing, sent those men running with broken bones and fear in their eyes. Given Sandy money, a bus ticket, contact information for safe houses he knew from his time with the club. Told her to disappear and never look back. And she had, until now, until this girl standing in his garage holding out his past like a mirror. "You were just a baby," Griff said quietly, studying her face. "Couldn't have been more than, 18 months old." "Lily, Bernal," she said. "My name is Lily Porter. I'm 12 now." 12, the math worked out, the timeline matched, but that didn't explain why she was here alone looking at him like he was the answer to a prayer he didn't deserve to hear. "Where's your mother?" The change in Lily's expression broke something inside him. Her jaw tightened. Her eyes went somewhere far away. When she spoke again, her voice had lost its steadiness. She died 4 months ago. Lung cancer, stage 4. The doctor said it was aggressive, said she probably had it for years but never knew until it was too late. The words hit him in waves. Sandy dead. The woman he'd helped escape whatever hell she'd been running from gone. And this girl, her daughter, standing in his garage with nowhere else to go. "I'm sorry," Griff said and meant it. The words felt inadequate, too small for the weight of what she'd lost. "Your mother, she was brave. Braver than most people I've known." Lily's composure cracked. Just for a moment, but he saw it. The way her lower lip trembled before she bit down on it. The quick blink to clear gathering tears. She was trying so hard to be strong, this kid. Trying to hold herself together with sheer force of will. "After she died, they put me in foster care." Lily's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. 5 different families in 4 months. Nobody wanted to keep me. Said I was too quiet, too difficult, too broken. She pulled up the sleeve of her jacket. Bruises, faded to yellow-green but unmistakable. Fingerprint-shaped marks on her upper arm. Griff's hands clenched into fists. That old familiar rage, the one he'd spent 15 years learning to control, surged up his throat like bile. Who did that? The last family. He drank. Got angry when I wouldn't call him father. Lily pulled her sleeve back down, covering the evidence. "I ran away 3 days ago, used the money Mom saved for me to take a bus here. I've been looking for your garage ever since. The smart thing would be to call social services. Get this kid into proper care, into the system, into someone else's hands." Griff wasn't equipped for this. Wasn't the kind of man who could or should be responsible for a 12-year-old girl. His life was simple now, deliberately empty, carefully constructed, to include nothing and no one who could get hurt. But looking at Lily standing there so small and so determined, he saw Sandy. Saw that same desperate courage. That same refusal to give up even when the world had beaten her down. "You eaten today?" The question seemed to surprise her. "I know, not since yesterday." Griff moved to the mini fridge in the corner, pulling out a Coke and a wrapped sandwich he'd bought that morning but hadn't touched. He held them out to her. "Eat, then we'll figure out what to do." Lily took the offerings carefully as if afraid they might disappear. She sat on an old metal stool near the workbench, unwrapping the sandwich with trembling fingers. The first bite seemed to unlock something in her, and suddenly she was eating like she hadn't seen food in days, which Griff realized, with another surge of protective anger, might not be far from the truth. He turned back to the Harley, giving her space, giving himself time to think. The sound of her eating filled the garage, punctuated by the distant rumble of traffic on the highway. His mind raced through possibilities, through obligations, through all the reasons this was a terrible idea. "Mom talked about you a lot," Lily said between bites. "Said you were different from other people. That you helped us when nobody else would. I did what anyone should have done. But you're the only one who did." She finished the sandwich, crumpled the wrapper. She kept that lighter all these years, said it reminded her that there were still good people in the world. Good people. Griff almost laughed. If Sandy had known what he'd done, who he'd been before that night, she might have reconsidered her definition of good. "Lily," he set down his tools, turned to face her fully. "I can't just let you stay here. You understand that, right? There are rules, laws. You're a minor. I'm a stranger." "You're not a stranger. You're the man who saved my life. Mom's too." Lily slid off the stool, standing straight, despite exhaustion that shadowed her eyes. "Please, I won't be any trouble. I can help in the garage. I'm good with my hands. I learn fast. I just need somewhere to be. Somewhere safe." Safe. The word echoed in the space between them. How long had it been since Griff had made anywhere safe for anyone? How long since he'd been anything other than a man hiding from his own shadow? One night he heard himself say, "You can stay one night while I make some calls, figure out the right way to handle this. But Lily, I need you to understand, I'm not the answer you're looking for." Her smile, small and fragile as spun glass, nearly undid him. Okay, one night. The old sofa in his office had seen better days. Griff pulled out a clean blanket from storage, one he kept for the rare nights he crashed at the garage instead of going to his apartment upstairs. He set it up while Lily watched from the doorway, her backpack clutched to her chest like a shield. "Bathroom's through there," he said, pointing. "There's not much, but the water runs hot. You want to clean up before bed?" Lily nodded, disappearing through the door. He heard the water start running and sat heavily on the edge of the couch, head in his hands. What was he doing? This wasn't his responsibility, wasn't his problem to solve. He should call someone, hand this off to people who knew how to handle things, like scared kids and broken systems. But the memory of those bruises stopped him. The thought of sending her back into a system that had already failed her made his stomach turn. The shower cut off. Minutes later, Lily emerged, hair damp, wearing an oversized t-shirt that must have come from her backpack. She looked even younger now, stripped of the defensive posture she'd worn like armor. "Mr. Callahan." "Just Griff is fine." "Griff?" She tested the name, seemed satisfied. "Do you think do you believe my mom is watching somewhere?" The question caught him off guard. Griff had never been religious, never put much stock in ideas about afterlife or divine justice. He'd seen too much darkness to believe in simple answers about heaven and hell. But looking at this kid who'd lost everything, he found himself wanting to lie, wanting to give her the comfort she was seeking. Instead, he told her something closer to truth. "I think your mom loved you more than anything. And that kind of love, it doesn't just disappear. Maybe she's watching. Maybe she's not. But I know she'd be proud of you. For being brave enough to come here. For not giving up." Lily climbed onto the couch, pulling the blanket up to her chin. "She used to tell me stories about you. About how you didn't even think twice about helping us. How you just stepped in and made the bad men go away. Your mom made me sound better than I was." "Are?" Lily's eyes were already drifting closed, exhaustion finally claiming her. "Better than you are. She said you were still good, even if you didn't believe it anymore." Griff sat there long after her breathing evened out into sleep. Watch this kid who'd walked into his garage and upended his carefully ordered life in the space of an hour. The wolf etched in his skin seemed to come alive in the dim light, reminder of who he'd been. The lighter sat on his workbench, reminder of who he'd tried to become. One night, he'd said, one night while he figured out what to do. But somewhere deep in his chest, in a place he'd thought long dead, he felt something shifting, something that felt dangerously like hope. The morning came too soon and brought with it a problem Griff hadn't anticipated. He woke before dawn, habit from years of early garage openings, and found himself standing in the doorway of his office, watching Lily sleep. She curled into a tight ball blanket, clutched close, and in the gray pre-dawn light, she looked impossibly small. He made coffee in the ancient pot that lived on his desk. The gurgling and hissing seemed too loud in the quiet, but Lily didn't stir. Kid was exhausted, running on empty for who knew how long. Griff pulled out his phone, scrolled through contacts he rarely used anymore. He should call Rachel Winters. She was a social worker, good people, someone who'd helped him navigate paperwork when he'd first opened the garage and needed permits. She'd know what to do, how to handle this properly. His thumb hovered over her name. But before he could press it, he noticed something else. An old file cabinet in the corner of his office, one he never opened, buried under years of receipts and forgotten paperwork. Something about it nagged at him. Something about Sandy and that night 10 years ago. He moved quietly, pulling open drawers with careful precision to avoid waking Lily. Old tax documents, motorcycle registration papers, business licenses from the garage's early days. And then at the very back of the bottom drawer, an envelope, yellowed with age. His name in familiar handwriting. Sandy's handwriting. Griff's heart hammered against his ribs as he pulled it out. When had she left this, that same night later? He couldn't remember. Couldn't remember anything except the rain and the fear and the desperate gratitude in her eyes. He took the envelope outside into the cool morning air, where the first hints of sunrise were starting to paint the sky pink and gold. Sat on the hood of an old pickup he'd been meaning to fix for months. Opened the letter with hands that shook more than they should have. The paper inside was worn soft, like it had been folded and refolded many times before being sealed. "Dear Griff, by the time you read this, I hope Lily and I will be far away and safe. I can't thank you enough for what you did. You saved our lives. More than that, you gave us a chance at a future. There's something I need to tell you, something I couldn't say that night because I was too afraid, too ashamed. Marcus Reeves, that's the name of the man I was running from. He thinks he's Lily's father. He believes it with everything in him. But Griff, he's not. Lily's real father was a man named James Porter. He died in a car accident 2 weeks before I found out I was pregnant. Marcus and I were already together by then. I'd left James made the worst mistake of my life getting involved with Marcus. When I discovered the pregnancy, I let Marcus believe the baby was his. I was scared. Alone. I thought maybe it would make him change. It didn't. Marcus became obsessed, possessive, violent. When I finally tried to leave, he swore he'd never let me take his daughter. That's when I ran. That's when you found us. If Marcus ever discovers the truth, if he ever finds out that Lily isn't his blood, I don't know what he'll do. His pride, his sense of ownership, it's all tied up in believing she's his child. I'm writing this because I need someone else to know the truth. Someone who might be able to protect Lily if anything ever happens to me. I know it's asking too much. I know you didn't sign up for any of this, but you're the only person who's ever helped us without wanting something in return. Please, Griff, if Lily ever finds her way back to you, keep her safe. Keep this secret safe. She deserves a life free from Marcus's shadow. With eternal gratitude, Sandy Porter. The letter fell from Griff's numb fingers, fluttering to the ground like a wounded bird. He sat there in the growing light, watching the sun climb higher, feeling the weight of Sandy's words settle into his bones. Marcus Reeves, a man who thought he had a daughter, a man possessive and violent enough to make Sandy run, a man who, if he ever learned the truth, would be unpredictable, dangerous. And Lily had no idea. No idea that the threat she'd inherited wasn't even based on biology, but on a lie born from fear. Griff retrieved the letter, folded it carefully, slid it into his jacket pocket. His coffee had gone cold, but he drank it anyway, needing the bitter bite to ground himself in the present moment. Inside the garage, he could see Lily starting to stir through the office window. She sat up slowly, looking around with the confusion of someone waking in an unfamiliar place. Then her eyes found him through the glass, and her expression shifted from uncertainty to something like relief. She raised a hand in a small wave. He waved back. One night, he'd said, one night to figure things out. But holding Sandy's secret, knowing what he now knew, Griff understood that nothing about this would be simple. Nothing about this would be quick. And somewhere out there, a man named Marcus Reeves existed. A man who believed he had a daughter to find. Griff watched the sunrise and made a decision that would change everything. He wasn't going to call Rachel Winters, not yet. Not until he knew more about what they were really dealing with. He was going to call someone else instead. Someone from his old life. Someone who knew how to find information about dangerous men and keep that information quiet. Lily Porter had walked into his garage looking for sanctuary. What she'd found instead was a man who knew exactly how dark the world could be, and exactly what it took to fight back against that darkness. The inked wolf caught the morning light. 15 years he'd been running from who he used to be. Looked like the running was finally over. Time to remember how to be dangerous again. The following 2 weeks passed in a rhythm Griff hadn't known he was capable of. Morning coffee shared in comfortable silence. Afternoons spent teaching Lily the language of engines and chrome. Evenings where the garage transformed from workspace into something that felt dangerously close to home. Lily learned fast, faster than he'd expected. She could identify tools by name after a single demonstration, remembered torque specifications like some kids remembered batting averages. Her small hands proved surprisingly adept at reaching into tight spaces where his work-hardened fingers couldn't fit. "Hand me the 3/8 socket," Griff said one afternoon, elbow deep in a Sportster engine. The tool appeared in his palm before he'd finished the sentence. He glanced at Lily, found her grinning with pride. "Getting good at this, kid. Mom always said I had good hands. She wanted me to be a surgeon." Lily's smile flickered. "I think I like motorcycles better, though." They were working on a customer's bike, but Griff had started a special project in the corner. An old Honda Shadow he had picked up for almost nothing at an estate sale. Needed work, lots of it, but the bones were good. He'd been restoring it slowly, letting Lily help with each step. It was supposed to be hers. He hadn't told her yet. Wasn't sure he'd have the chance to give it to her before the world came crashing down. Because Griff had made calls, and what he'd learned kept him awake at night. The first call had gone to Hank Davis. Everyone called him Wrench, a nickname earned over 40 years of making motorcycles run like dreams. Wrench had been with Griff in the old days, before the club fell apart, before they had all scattered to quieter lives. Marcus Reeves, Wrench had said, over the phone, voice crackling with age and cigarette damage. Yeah, I remember that name. He was running with the Iron Cross crew out of Philadelphia. Bad news, Griff. The kind of bad that doesn't wash off. What's his current status? Released from state prison 4 months ago. Assault, weapons charges, did 7 years of a 10-year sentence. Papers rustled in the background. But here's the thing, brother. Word on the street is he's been asking questions, looking for someone, a woman and a kid. Griff's hand had tightened on the phone. How close is he? Close enough that you should be worried. The second call had been harder. Cole Morrison, Reaper as everyone who knew him called him, 62 years old, former president of the Pennsylvania Hells Angels chapter, and the closest thing to a father figure Griff had ever known. Reaper had recruited him at 19, taught him how to ride, how to fight, how to survive in a world where violence was currency and loyalty was everything. He'd also been the one to let Griff walk away 15 years ago when the weight of that life had become too much to carry. Griff Callahan, Reaper's voice had been gravel and whiskey roughened by decades of shouting over engine noise. Thought you were dead, brother. Just quiet. Quiet's good. What's got you breaking silence? Griff had explained. Not everything but enough. A girl from his past who needed protection. A man who wouldn't stop looking. The kind of trouble that required old solutions. Reaper had listened without interrupting. When Griff finished, silence stretched for long seconds. This girl, Reaper finally said, she means something to you. She's 12 years old and she's got nobody. That ain't what I asked. Griff looked through the garage window at Lily, who was organizing his tool chest with intense concentration. Yeah, she means something. Then you already know what you gotta do. Question is whether you're ready to be that person again. I don't want to be that person. Once got nothing to do with it, brother. Sometimes the wolf's gotta come out of hiding to protect the den. Reaper paused. I'll make some calls. See what else I can dig up on this Marcus character. But Griff, you might want to start thinking about bringing the family back together. This don't sound like a one-man job. The family, the brotherhood, the men who'd ridden beside him through blood and fire, who'd stood at his back when the world tried to tear him down. Griff had left that life behind for a reason. Too much violence, too many ghosts, too many ways for good intentions to curdle into something dark. But Reaper was right. This wasn't something he could handle alone. 3 days after that conversation, Lily was sorting through carburetor parts when she looked up suddenly. Dad. The words stopped Griff mid-motion. She'd called him that twice now, both times seeming to surprise herself. The first time had been an accident, handing him a wrench with, "Here, Dad," falling from her lips before she caught herself. The second time just yesterday, asking if he wanted coffee. Each time it happened, something in his chest cracked open a little wider. Yeah, kid. There was a man outside this morning. When I went to get breakfast at the diner, he was watching the garage. Griff set down his tools carefully, keeping his voice level. What did he look like? Older, maybe 50, gray hair, nice suit. He had a camera, big one, professional looking. Lily's hands had stilled on the parts. When he saw me looking, he smiled and left. But it felt wrong, the way he was watching. Ice water in his veins. A professional with a camera meant private investigator, which meant Marcus was closer than Wrench had thought. Listen to me carefully, Griff said, moving to kneel in front of Lily so they were eye level. From now on, you don't leave the garage without telling me. You don't talk to strangers. You see anyone watching, anyone who feels wrong, you come find me immediately. Understand? Fear bloomed in Lily's eyes, but she nodded. Is it him, the man my mom was running from? I don't know yet, but we're going to be smart about this. We're going to be careful. That night, after Lily had gone to bed in what had become her space in the office, Griff stood in the darkened garage and made another call. Reaper, we've got a problem. The meeting happened 2 days later. Griff closed the garage early, something he never did, and waited as motorcycles began to arrive. One by one, they pulled up, engines rumbling like thunder, until 8 bikes sat in formation outside Callahan's custom motorcycles. 8 men dismounted. 8 men Griff hadn't seen together in 15 years. Reaper came first, silver beard, braided leather vest showing patches that told a lifetime of stories. Behind him, Diesel Donovan, massive as a mountain, arms covered in ink that disappeared into his black t-shirt. Wrench Davis, thin as wire, eyes sharp as the tools he worked with. Tommy Smoke Sullivan, 40 pounds heavier than Griff remembered, but moving with the same predatory grace. Four others Griff knew less well but trusted completely. Men who'd ridden with the club, who'd stood by the code, who understood what brotherhood meant when the world went dark. They filed into the garage silently. No handshakes, no reunion speeches, just nods of recognition and the understanding that came from shared history. Lily emerged from the office, drawn by the sound. She stopped short when she saw the assembled bikers, all leather and steel and weathered faces. "It's okay," Griff told her. "These are friends, family." Reaper's eyes tracked from Griff to Lily, seeing the resemblance that wasn't there, understanding it anyway. "This the girl? This is Lily." Griff put a hand on her shoulder. "Lily, this is Reaper, and the rest of these ugly bastards who just scared the hell out of you." A ripple of low laughter. Diesel stepped forward, extending a hand the size of a dinner plate. "Pleased to meet you, miss. Your dad here says you're learning the trade." Dad. The word from someone else's mouth made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Griff saw Lily's eyes widen slightly, saw her look at him for confirmation. He nodded, just once. The smile that broke across her face could have lit the whole garage. They gathered in a circle, Lily perched on a stool at Griff's side while he explained the situation. He gave them the basics. Sandy, the rescue 10 years ago. Marcus Reeves, the private investigator. What he didn't mention was the letter, the secret about Lily's real father. Some cards you kept close until absolutely necessary. "So what you're saying," Smoke drawled when Griff finished, "is we've got a vengeful ex-con with mob connections hunting a 12-year-old girl who's under your protection. That's about the size of it. And you want us to, what exactly, stand guard, run interference? I want you to help me figure out how to keep her safe." Griff looked around the circle at men who'd seen and done terrible things in the name of brotherhood. "I can't do this alone. But I'm not asking you to fight my battles. I'm asking for advice, for information, for options I'm not seeing." Reaper spoke up, voice carrying authority that made everyone else go quiet. "Way I see it, you got three choices: run, hide, or fight. Running didn't work for Sandy. Hiding won't work either," Wrench added. "Not if he's already got an investigator on your tail. They'll find you eventually." "Which leaves fighting," Diesel rumbled. "And brother, I know you've been out of the game for a while, but that's what we do best." Griff shook his head. "I'm not dragging you all into a war. That's not what this is about." "Then what is it about?" Reaper leaned forward, eyes intense. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like one of our own needs help. And the way I remember it, the code says we don't leave brothers behind. Even brothers who've been hiding in garages for 15 years. I'm not your brother anymore. I walked away. You walked away from the club, not from us." Reaper gestured around the circle. "Every man here would still take a bullet for you, Griff. You know why? Because you earned that loyalty. Because when it mattered, you stood up. You fought. You bled for this family. That was a long time ago. Some things don't have expiration dates." The room fell silent. Griff felt Lily's eyes on him, felt the weight of expectation from men who'd once been his whole world. "I don't want to be that person again," he said quietly. "Maybe you don't have a choice," Smoke said, not unkindly. "Maybe the wolf's got to come out of hiding one more time." It was Lily who broke the stalemate. She slid off the stool, walked to the center of the circle, and looked up at Reaper with the kind of courage that belonged to someone twice her age. "My mom spent 10 years running," she said, voice clear and steady. "She ran until running killed her. I don't want to run. I want to stay here, with Griff, with all of you if you'll have us. I want to fight." Diesel let out a low whistle. "Kid's got spine." "She's 12, Griff protested, "and she's got more balls than half the prospects I've seen." Reaper's weathered face cracked into something approaching a smile. "Girl's right, Griff. Running's not the answer, never was." The decision crystallized in that moment. Griff looked around at faces he'd known for decades, at men who'd shown up without question when he'd called. At Lily, standing small but unafraid in the center of it all. "All right," he said, "we fight, but we do it smart. We gather information, we prepare, and when Marcus makes his move, we're ready." Reaper stood, and one by one the others followed. Meeting set for tomorrow night. We'll coordinate. Set up surveillance on known associates. Put out feelers in the underworld. See what we can learn about this investigator. They filed out engines roaring to life one after another. But before Reaper left, he pulled Griff aside. This girl, Reaper said quiet enough that only Griff could hear. You're in deep, brother. Deeper than you're admitting. She needed help. We all need help. But you're looking at her like she's yours, like you've already decided. Reaper's eyes were knowing. Just make sure you're ready for what that means. Because if Marcus comes and you're not prepared to do what needs doing, that girl's going to pay the price. I know. Do you? Reaper gripped Griff's shoulder. Because the man I knew 15 years ago, he wouldn't hesitate. He'd do whatever it took to protect his family. But you've been playing civilian for a long time, wearing sheep's clothing. When push comes to shove, you still remember how to be the wolf. Griff thought about Sandy's letter, about the secret he was keeping, about the lengths he was already prepared to go to keep Lily safe. Yeah, he said, I remember. The next 72 hours blurred together in a haze of preparation and gathering intelligence. Wrench installed security cameras around the garage's perimeter. Smoke drew up escape routes and safe house locations. Diesel coordinated with contacts in Philadelphia, trying to track Marcus's movements. And Griff taught Lily how to be ready, not how to fight. She was too young for that, too small. But he showed her the hiding spots he'd built into the garage. The loose panel in the bathroom wall that led to a crawl space. The modified tool chest with a false bottom large enough for a person her size. The signal they'd use if she needed to run. 3 taps on metal, he explained, demonstrating on a workbench. You hear that, you go to the bathroom, you get in the wall, you don't come out until I give the all clear. No matter what you hear, no matter what you think is happening, you stay hidden. Lily practiced until her knuckles were bruised from tapping, until she could get from any point in the garage to her hiding spot in under 30 seconds. But there were lighter moments too. Evenings when the brotherhood would stop by bringing food trading stories, treating Lily like she'd always been part of the family. Diesel taught her how to throw a proper punch despite Griff's protests. Smoke showed her card tricks. Wrench let her help rebuild a carburetor from scratch. She was blooming under the attention, growing more confident, more herself. The scared kid who'd walked into the garage 3 weeks ago was transforming into someone stronger. And then, on the 4th night after the meeting, Griff's phone rang. Wrench's voice tight with urgency. We've got confirmation. Marcus hired Dominic Shaw, best PI in the tri-state area. Shaw's been tracking financial records, security footage, interviewing people in Sandy's old neighborhood. How close is he? He knows about the garage, knows about you. He's been watching for 3 days, waiting for the right moment to make contact. Griff's blood ran cold. Contact for what? To deliver a message. Marcus wants to meet. Says he just wants to talk. Says if you give him his daughter peacefully, nobody has to get hurt. And if I don't, then he's prepared to take her by force. He's got people, Griff. Ex-cons he did time with. Russian mob connections from his trafficking days. This isn't some angry ex making threats. This is organized, professional. When Shaw says Marcus will be at the garage in 72 hours, high noon on Saturday. He'll come alone if you come alone. Otherwise, he brings his crew. Griff looked through the office window at Lily, who was reading a motorcycle manual by lamplight, completely absorbed. So innocent, so unaware of the storm building around her. Tell Shaw we'll meet, Griff said, but not at the garage. I don't want Lily anywhere near this. Griff, you sure about this, going face-to-face with Marcus? No, but I don't see another option. We need to know what we're dealing with. Need to look him in the eye and figure out if this can end peacefully. But even as he said it, Griff knew the truth. Men like Marcus Reeves didn't understand peaceful, didn't know how to let go. He'd spent 10 years hunting Sandy and Lily, 10 years obsessed with the idea of his family. Learning that Lily wasn't actually his daughter would break him, or make him more dangerous. Either way, the storm was coming. Griff ended the call and sat in the darkness watching Lily read. She looked up, caught him staring, and smiled. That bright, trusting smile that said she believed he could protect her. That she felt safe here in this garage with this man who was barely keeping himself together. 3 days until Marcus arrived. 3 days to prepare Lily for the possibility that everything might fall apart. 3 days to remember how to be dangerous. Griff walked into the office and knelt beside Lily's chair. "We need to talk," he said quietly. She closed the manual, all attention on him. "What's wrong?" "The man your mom was running from, Marcus Reeves, he's coming here. In 3 days. And Lily, I need you to understand something. This might get bad before it gets better." Fear flickered in her eyes, but she didn't look away. "What do? We prepare, we plan. And if things go wrong, you follow every protocol we practiced. You hide, you stay quiet, you wait for my signal." "What about you?" "I'll handle Marcus." "But what if," her voice cracked, "what if you can't? What if he's too strong or too smart or—" Griff took her hands in his. "Listen to me. I made a promise to your mother. I promised I'd keep you safe. And I've never broken a promise to someone I love." The word hung between them. Love. He hadn't meant to say it, hadn't planned this moment. But looking at Lily's face, seeing her fighting back tears, he realized it was true. Somewhere in the past 3 weeks, this scared kid had become his daughter in every way that mattered. "I love you too, Dad," Lily whispered. And in that moment, Griff Callahan made a decision. Whatever it took, whatever darkness he had to embrace, whatever parts of himself he'd buried had to claw their way back to the surface, he would protect her. Marcus Reeves would not take this girl, not while Griff still had breath in his lungs and fight in his bones. The wolf had been sleeping for 15 years. Time to wake it up. Saturday morning arrived wrapped in frost, the kind of cold that made breath visible and steel burn to touch. Griff stood in the garage before dawn, staring at the empty space where Lily's makeshift bed had been just hours ago. She was safe. That was what mattered. Tucked away in a cabin 2 hours north with Smoke and his wife standing guard. She'd fought, leaving tears streaming down her face as she'd begged to stay. To stand beside him. To not be sent away like she didn't matter. "You matter more than anything," Griff had told her, holding her close while her shoulders shook. "That's exactly why you can't be here. I need to know you're safe. Need to focus on Marcus without worrying about you being in the crossfire. But what if something happens to you? Then Smoke will take care of you. Make sure you grow up right. Make sure you finish that Honda we've been working on." "I don't want Smoke. I want you." Her voice had been small, broken. "Please don't make me go." But he'd been firm. Had to be. Because men like Marcus didn't play by rules. Didn't care about collateral damage. And if things went wrong, if the confrontation turned violent, Griff needed to know that Lily was far from the blast radius. Now alone in the pre-dawn quiet, he prepared. The meeting was set for noon at neutral ground, an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Pittsburgh near the old steel mills that had been rusting into memory for decades. Marcus had agreed to come alone. Griff knew that was almost certainly a lie, which was why the brotherhood would be there too, hidden, watching, ready to move if things turned bad. Griff pulled on his leather vest for the first time in 15 years. The weight of it felt foreign and familiar all at once. Patches showing his former rank, his road name that he'd stopped using. Ghost. They'd called him Ghost because he could disappear into any situation, slip through defenses, appear where he wasn't expected. Time to see if he still knew how to haunt. His phone buzz. Text from Reaper. In position, eyes on all entrances. Marcus just pulled up. He's not alone. Griff's jaw tightened. Of course he wasn't alone. Men like Marcus always stacked the deck. How many 4 with him in the car? 2 more vehicles circling the perimeter. 10 total, maybe 12. Acknowledged. I'm inbound. Griff strapped a knife to his boot. Checked the small canister of pepper spray in his pocket. He didn't carry guns anymore, hadn't touched one since leaving the club. But that didn't mean he was going in defenseless. The warehouse loomed against the gray morning sky windows, broken like missing teeth. Walls tagged with graffiti that spoke of decades of decay. Griff's truck crunched across gravel, pulling to a stop 50 yards from the main entrance. He could see them now. Marcus Reeves stood in the center of the loading dock, flanked by 2 men in dark jackets. Even from a distance, Griff could read the body language. Aggressive posturing. Hands near concealed weapons. This wasn't a meeting. This was a show of force. Griff cut the engine and stepped out. The cold hit him immediately, biting through his jeans and leather. He walked forward slowly, hands visible, making no sudden movements. Marcus was smaller than expected. Maybe 5'10", lean build, dark hair going gray at the temples. But his eyes were what caught Griff's attention. Hard, cold. The eyes of a man who'd spent years learning to hurt people without feeling it. Griff Callahan, Marcus's voice carried across the space between them. The great protector, Sandy's knight in rusted armor. Griff stopped 15 feet away, close enough to talk, far enough to react if things turned violent. Marcus Reeves, the man who made a woman run scared for 10 years. I loved her. Marcus's hands clenched into fists. Everything I did because I loved her, and she took my daughter and ran like I was some kind of monster. Were you? The question hung in the cold air. Marcus's jaw worked, anger flickering across his features before he forced it back down. I made mistakes, I know that. I was young, stupid, angry at the world. He took a step forward, his men tensed hands moving toward weapons. But I've changed, did my time, thought about my life, about what I lost. I just want to see my daughter Griff, that's all. Just want to know she's okay. She's more than okay, she's safe, happy, somewhere you'll never find her. She's mine. Marcus's voice dropped to something dangerous. My blood, my family. You've got no right to keep her from me. This was it. The moment Griff had been dreading and preparing for. The moment where he had to choose between protecting Lily's future and revealing a truth that would destroy Marcus's entire world. He thought of Sandy's letter, of her desperate plea to keep the secret. But looking at Marcus now, seeing the obsession in his eyes, Griff knew that lies would only delay the inevitable. She's not yours, Marcus. The words fell like stones into still water. Ripples of shock spreading across Marcus's face. What? Lily isn't your daughter. Never was. Sandy was already pregnant when you two got together. The father died before she even knew. She let you believe the lie because she was scared and alone. But that little girl you've spent 10 years hunting, Griff let the truth hit hard. She doesn't have a drop of your blood in her veins. For a long moment, Marcus just stood there, processing. The men flanking him exchanged glances, uncertain how to react. The entire world seemed to hold its breath. Then Marcus laughed. It was an ugly sound, sharp and broken. You're lying. Sandy wouldn't, she couldn't. I've got her letter, written in her own hand, explaining everything. She wanted to protect Lily from you. From this. Griff gestured at the armed men, the abandoned warehouse, the confrontation that proved every one of Sandy's fears had been justified. No, Marcus shook his head violently. No, you're lying. This is some trick to keep me away. But I know the truth. I know. You know nothing. Griff's voice cut through Marcus's denial like a blade. You spent a decade chasing a ghost, building a fantasy in your head about the family that was stolen from you. But Marcus, there was never any family. Just a terrified woman running from a violent man. I loved her. The scream tore out of Marcus's throat, raw and agonized. I would have done anything for her. For them. Love doesn't make people run in terror. Love doesn't leave bruises and broken bones. Whatever you felt for Sandy, it wasn't love. It was possession, obsession. And she died still afraid you'd find her daughter. Marcus's face contorted with rage and grief and something that might have been shame. His hand disappeared into his jacket. Griff tensed, ready to move, when the cold press of metal touched the back of his neck. Don't! A voice from behind him. One of Marcus's men had circled around during the confrontation. Hands where I can see them. Griff raised his hands slowly. Through the broken windows above, he saw shadows moving. The Brotherhood getting into position. But they wouldn't move unless he gave the signal. Wouldn't risk starting a firefight that could end with Griff dead. Marcus walked forward, face twisted with emotion. You took everything from me. Sandy, my daughter who isn't my daughter. 10 years of my life wasted in prison thinking about a family that was all lies. I didn't take anything, Marcus. You lost it yourself. Through your own choices, your own violence. Shut up! Marcus's hand shot out, backhanding Griff hard enough to split his lip. Blood filled his mouth, copper and warm. You don't get to judge me. You don't know what it's like to lose everything. Actually, I do. Griff straightened up, ignoring the gun still pressed to his skull. I lost my family, my brothers, walked away from the only life I'd known because I couldn't live with what I'd become. Spent 15 years alone trying to build something better. So yeah, Marcus, I know exactly what loss tastes like. Then you know I can't just let this go. Can't just walk away knowing that girl exists somewhere living a life I should have been part of. She was never meant to be a part of your life. That's what you're not understanding. You have no claim to her, no rights, no connection except the one you built in your head. Marcus pulled a gun from his jacket, not pointing it at Griff yet, but holding it loose finger resting near the trigger. Where is she? Somewhere safe. Where, shoot me if you want, won't change the answer. Marcus's hands shook. Griff could see the war playing out behind his eyes, rage fighting with reason, the desire for violence battling against whatever shreds of humanity remained. Marcus, Griff kept his voice level calm, you can pull that trigger, can kill me right here, but it won't bring Sandy back, won't make Lily your daughter, won't change any of the truths you're trying to run from. Then what's left? Marcus's voice cracked. What's left for me? The chance to do the right thing. For the first time in your relationship with Sandy, the chance to actually protect her daughter by leaving her alone, by letting her grow up safe and happy, free from all this darkness. And I'm just supposed to accept that, walk away with nothing. You walk away with your life, your freedom, and maybe if you work for it, some kind of redemption. Marcus lowered the gun slowly. For a moment, Griff thought they might actually get through this without bloodshed, that somehow impossibly Marcus might choose the better path. Then headlights cut through the morning gloom, a vehicle approaching, fast tires screaming on gravel. Griff's stomach dropped as he recognized the truck. Smoke's truck, and in the passenger seat pressed against the window was Lily. Everything happened at once. Marcus saw her and lunged forward, shouting her name. Griff threw himself sideways, knocking the gunman off balance. The weapon discharged bullet, sparking off concrete. Then the Brotherhood erupted from their positions, motorcycles roaring to life, men appearing with weapons drawn. Smoke's truck skidded to a halt. The door flew open and Lily jumped out, running toward Griff, despite Smoke's shouted warnings. "Dad!" Griff caught her, spinning her behind him as Marcus's men opened fire. The world exploded into chaos. Bullets whining off metal. Bikers returning fire. Someone screaming orders that got lost in the noise. "Get down!" Griff pushed Lily toward the truck, using his body as a shield. A round caught him high on the shoulder, spinning him around. Pain blossomed hot and bright, but he stayed on his feet. Reaper appeared on his Harley, sliding sideways between Griff and Marcus's men, laying down, suppressing fire with a shotgun. Diesel charged in on foot, massive frame absorbing hits that would have dropped smaller men, clearing a path. The truck. Smoke was there, grabbing Lily, trying to pull her to safety. "We need to move now." But Lily fought him, reaching for Griff, with tears streaming down her face. "No, I'm not leaving him. I'm not." Marcus broke through the chaos, gun-raised eyes wild with desperation and rage. He was aiming at Griff, finger tightening on the trigger, when Lily stepped between them. "Stop," her voice cut through the noise. "Just stop." Everyone froze. The shooting tapered off as both sides hesitated, unwilling to risk hitting the girl. Lily stood in the middle of the warehouse, petite but fierce, refusing to back down. She looked at Marcus with her mother's green gaze, ancient beyond her years. "You want to know who your daughter is?" Her voice shook but held firm. "I'm not her. I never was. My father died before I was born. My mother ran from you because you hurt her. Hurt us. And the only father I've ever known is that man behind me who's bleeding because he tried to protect me from you." Marcus's gun hand wavered. Up close, Griff could see the resemblance between them that wasn't there. The shape of the eyes was wrong. The jawline different. Features inherited from her mother, but not from Marcus. The truth written in biology for anyone willing to see it. "Lily Quinn," Marcus started, but she cut him off. "My name is Lily Rose Porter. Not Reeves, Porter. And I don't know you. Don't want to know you. All I know is that you made my mother so afraid she spent her whole life running. That she died still scared you'd find us." Tears streamed down Lily's face, but her voice never wavered. "Is that what you want? To be the monster in a little girl's nightmares?" The gun fell from Marcus's hand, clattering on concrete. He stood there, broken, all the fight draining out of him. His men lowered their weapons, reading the surrender in their boss's posture. "I'm sorry." The words barely made it past Marcus's lips. "God, Sandy, I'm so sorry." Sirens wailed in the distance. Someone had called the police. The Brotherhood started to pull back, fading into the shadows the way they'd appeared. Griff felt hands on him, Diesel and Wrench supporting his weight. "We need to go, brother. Now." But Griff shook them off, walking toward Marcus. The older man looked up, eyes red with tears, a shell of the dangerous predator he'd been minutes ago. "You've got one chance," Griff said quietly. "One chance to do the right thing. Tell the police this was a misunderstanding, that nobody needs to press charges. Walk away from this. From her. Forever. And if I don't, then I'll use every connection I have, every favor I'm owed, every dark secret I've kept for 15 years to make sure you go back to prison. And this time you'll die there." Griff leaned closer. "Your choice, Marcus. Redemption or destruction." Marcus looked past him to where Lily stood in Smoke's protective embrace. The girl met his gaze without flinching. In that moment, something passed between them. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but perhaps understanding, perhaps acknowledgement that some bridges burn too bright to ever cross again. "I'll tell them it was a misunderstanding," Marcus said finally. "I'll walk away. And Lily, I'll forget she exists. I'll let her have the life her mother wanted." The police cars pulled up, officers emerging with weapons drawn. Griff raised his hands, showing he was unarmed. Beside him, Marcus did the same. The story they told was simple. A business dispute that got heated. Shots fired, but nobody injured seriously. All parties willing to settle it peacefully. The police didn't believe a word. But without victims willing to press charges, without bodies or grievous injuries, they had no case to build. They took statements, confiscated, weapons issued, warnings about wasting police resources. And then impossibly, everyone was free to go. Marcus walked to his car alone, his men following like shadows. Before he got in, he looked back one last time at Lily. She stood beside Griff, holding his hand, her other arm wrapped around his waist. A family, Griff realized. They looked like a family. Marcus nodded once. Then he was gone, taillights disappearing into the gray morning. 3 months later, the paperwork was finalized. The hearing had been surprisingly simple, with Marcus's signed affidavit relinquishing any parental claims, with Griff's spotless record of the past 15 years, with Lily's clear testimony about where she wanted to be. The judge had barely hesitated. "It's my opinion," Judge Patricia Morrison had said, peering over her glasses at them both, "that this child has found exactly where she belongs. Mr. Callahan, you're hereby granted full legal custody. Miss Porter, you have a new father." Lily had cried. Griff had tried not to. Rachel Winters, the social worker who'd guided them through the process, had dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. Now, on a cold January afternoon, the garage had been transformed. Wrench had strung lights across the ceiling. Diesel had brought his smoker, filling the space with the scent of slow-cooked ribs. The Brotherhood had shown up in forced bikes lined up outside like chrome sentinels. Vera Patterson from down the street had made a cake. Rachel brought champagne, though nobody was drinking, given the guest of honor was 12. Even some of Griff's customers had stopped by, bringing gifts and well wishes. In the center of it all, Lily stood wearing a new dress beaming brighter than the sun. The official adoption certificate was framed on the wall behind her, next to a photo Reaper had snapped of her and Griff working on the Honda. Lily Rose Callahan, her new name, her new life. "Speech," someone called out. Others took up the chant. "Speech, speech." Lily looked at Griff, panicked. He just grinned and nodded toward the assembly. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. "I don't really know what to say, except thank you, to all of you." Her eyes swept across the faces of the Brotherhood, the neighbors, the family they'd built from borrowed parts and second chances. "A few months ago, I had nobody. No home, no family, nothing but memories and fear." Her voice caught. Griff moved to stand beside her, hand on her shoulder. "Then I walked into this garage," Lily continued, "and found a man who didn't have to help me but did anyway, who gave me a place to sleep and taught me how to fix motorcycles and showed me what family really means." She turned to Griff, eyes shining with tears. "You didn't save me because you had to. You saved me because that's who you are. And I want you to know that you didn't just give me a home. You gave me hope. You gave me a reason to believe that good people still exist." Griff pulled her into a hug, not trusting himself to speak. Around them, the garage erupted in applause and cheers. Diesel whistled. Wrench wiped his eyes. Even Reaper looked suspiciously emotional. When the noise died down, Griff cleared his throat. I've got something for you too, kid. He led her to the corner where a tarp covered something large. With a dramatic flourish that made her laugh, he pulled it away. The Honda Shadow gleamed under the lights, completely restored, painted a deep blue that caught the light like water, chrome polished to a mirror shine. And on the gas tank, hand-painted in delicate script, Lily Rose. Your first bike, Griff said. We built it together. Seemed right that it should be yours. Lily ran her hands over the leather seat, the handlebars, the engine they had rebuilt, bolt by bolt. It's perfect. Not quite. Griff pulled a helmet from behind the bike, custom painted to match with a small wolf design on the side. Can't ride without proper gear. Can we? Lily looked up at him hopefully. Can we take it out? Just a short ride? Griff checked his watch. Still a few hours of daylight left. Short ride, and you're driving. The crowd parted as they wheeled the bike outside. Lily put on the helmet, hands shaking with excitement as she straddled the bike. Griff climbed on behind her, reaching around to help guide her hands to the controls. Remember what I taught you. Clutch in, first gear, easy on the throttle. The engine rumbled to life. Lily let out a whoop of pure joy that made everyone smile. Slowly, carefully, they pulled away from the garage. Down the street past Vera's house toward the highway that stretched into the setting sun. Behind them, the Brotherhood mounted their own bikes. One by one, engines roared to life. They fell into formation, riding escort, a family surrounding one of their own. They rode for an hour, just cruising, enjoying the cold air and the freedom of the open road. Lily handled the bike beautifully, all those hours of practice paying off in smooth shifts and confident turns. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold, Griff tapped Lily's shoulder and pointed to an exit. She nodded, guiding them off the highway toward a place Griff hadn't visited in months. Riverside Cemetery sat on a hill overlooking the city. They parked the bikes near the entrance and walked in silence to a simple headstone in the newer section. Sandy Porter, beloved mother, the dates of her too short life carved in granite. Lily knelt, placing a hand on the cold stone. Hi, Mom. I wanted you to meet someone. Well, you already know him, but he's different now. We both are. She looked up at Griff, who moved to stand beside her. Together, they faced the grave of the woman who had brought them together. I'm keeping her safe, Sandy, Griff said quietly. Like I promised. She's brilliant, strong, stubborn as hell, just like her mother. He smiled. She's learning to ride, working in the garage, getting straight A's in school, everything you dream for her. And I found a family, Mom, Lily added. Not just Dad, but uncles and aunts and a whole community of people who care about me. I'm not running anymore. I'm not scared. I'm home. The wind picked up, rustling through the trees. Somewhere in the distance, the Brotherhood's engines idled, giving them privacy but staying close. Always close. We should go, Griff said finally, getting dark. But before they left, Lily pulled something from her pocket. The Zippo lighter chrome surface dulled by time and tears. She placed it gently at the base of the headstone. You don't need to hold on to this anymore, Mom. I found him, and he found me. We're okay now. They walked back to the bikes hand in hand. The Brotherhood waited, engines rumbling like patient beasts. Reaper nodded to Griff, a gesture of respect and understanding. Lily climbed onto the Honda, put on her helmet, looked back at her father with a grin that lit up the gathering dark. Race you home. Griff laughed, the sound rusty from disuse but genuine. You're on, kid. They pulled onto the highway, two bikes riding side by side. Behind them, the Brotherhood followed, a rolling wall of leather and chrome and loyalty. The sunset painted them all in gold and crimson silhouettes against the dying light. Griff glanced over at Lily, saw her profile sharp and confident, saw the future spreading out before her like an open road. For 15 years, he'd been running from who he was, hiding from his past, trying to outrun the ghost of violence and darkness. Then a 12-year-old girl had walked into his garage and taught him the truth he'd been too afraid to see. Family wasn't about blood. It was about who showed up, who stayed, who fought for you when the world said run. He'd spent his life being the wolf, the predator, the dangerous man in the shadows. But maybe, just maybe, wolves could protect as fiercely as they hunted, could love as deeply as they fought, could build dens worth defending. The highway stretched ahead, endless and full of possibility. Behind them, the past faded into memory. Ahead, the future waited. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, Griff Callahan wasn't afraid of either. They rode into the sunset together. Father and daughter, wolf and cub, family. The weeks that followed the adoption felt like learning to breathe again. Griff hadn't realized how much tension he had been carrying until it was gone, replaced by something lighter. Something that felt suspiciously like joy. Lily settled into her new life with the kind of enthusiasm that reminded Griff why kids were supposed to be resilient. She'd transformed the small apartment above the garage into something that actually looked lived in. Posters of classic motorcycles competed for wall space with her schoolwork, which she attacked with the same intensity she brought to learning engine repair. The Honda became her pride and joy. Every evening after homework, she'd spend an hour maintaining it, checking oil levels, cleaning the chain, polishing chrome until it gleamed. Griff would watch from his workbench, offering guidance when needed, but mostly just enjoying the quiet companionship. "You're going to polish the paint right off if you keep at it like that," he said one Thursday evening, looking up from a carburetor he was rebuilding. Lily grinned, not pausing in her work. "Mrs. Patterson says if something's worth doing, it's worth doing right. Mrs. Patterson also says you should be in bed by 9 on school nights, but I notice that rule doesn't seem to stick." "That's different. This is education. You said so yourself. Learning proper motorcycle maintenance is a life skill." Griff couldn't argue with that logic, mostly because it was his own logic being used against him. The garage had become something more than just a workplace. It was a home in the truest sense. The Brotherhood stopped by regularly, never with warnings or updates about Marcus anymore, just to check in. To share a beer with Griff while Lily showed off whatever new techniques she'd mastered. To be family. Diesel had taken to bringing his daughter around a girl named Emma, who was a year older than Lily. The two had bonded instantly over a shared love of machines and a mutual disdain for anything pink. They'd spend hours in the garage covered in grease laughing at jokes Griff pretended not to understand. Wrench had started teaching Lily welding on weekends. She'd come home with burns on her arms and stars in her eyes, talking about metal and heat and the satisfaction of creating something permanent. Even Reaper, who Griff had always known as the hardest man he'd ever met, had gone soft around Lily. He'd shown up one day with a leather jacket in her size patches already sewn on. Not club patches, but custom ones. A small wolf. The word family in script. Her name. "Can't have you riding around looking like a civilian," Reaper had grumbled, trying to hide his smile when Lily threw her arms around him. School had been an adjustment. Lily was smart, smarter than her previous schools had given her credit for. But she'd missed so much moving between foster homes that catching up felt overwhelming. Griff had hired a tutor, a retired teacher named Margaret Walsh, who lived 2 streets over. Margaret was patient and firm, in equal measure exactly what Lily needed. Within a month, Lily had gone from barely passing to top of her class in math and science. "She's got a gift for spatial reasoning," Margaret told Griff during one of their weekly check-ins, "and her problem-solving skills are exceptional. All that time working with engines, I suppose. She sees things in 3 dimensions. She gets that from her mother," Griff had said without thinking. Margaret had given him a knowing smile. "I'm sure she does." The nightmares had been the hardest part. Lily would wake up screaming, tangled in sheets, calling for Sandy. The first few times it happened, Griff had stood frozen in her doorway, unsure what to do. Unsure if he had the right to comfort her. But then instinct had taken over. He'd sit on the edge of her bed, hand on her shoulder, voice low and steady, talking about nothing in particular. About the bikes they were working on, about the weather, about the stupid thing Diesel had said that afternoon. Anything to bring her back to the present, to remind her she was safe. After a while, the nightmares came less frequently. And when they did, Lily would pad down to the garage in the middle of the night, finding Griff inevitably awake and working. They'd sit together in the quiet, surrounded by the familiar smell of oil and metal, until sleep felt possible again. "You ever regret it?" Lily asked one of those nights, voice small in the darkness. "Taking me in your life was probably simpler before." Griff had looked at her, this kid who'd walked into his garage and turned his carefully ordered world upside down. "Not for a single second," he'd said, and meant it. Spring came early that year. By March, the snow had melted and the garage doors could stay open without freezing everyone inside. Griff expanded business hours, taking on more custom jobs. Lily helped where she could, her skills improving daily. They developed a system. Griff would handle the complex mechanical work, while Lily did prep and finishing. She'd become meticulous about detail work, spending hours getting paint jobs, perfect polishing chrome until it was mirror bright. Callahan's is getting a reputation. Wrench mentioned one afternoon looking at the schedule board that was now packed solid for 3 months. People coming from 3 states over for custom work. That's all Lily, Griff said, nodding toward where she was carefully pinstriping a gas tank. Girl's got an artist's hand. The truth was they worked well together. Griff had never been much for conversation, preferred to let his work speak for itself. Lily understood that, could work beside him for hours in comfortable silence. Both of them focused on their respective tasks, communicating in hand signals and the occasional grunt. But she'd also brought something else to the garage. Warmth before Lily customers had been transactions. People who needed work done, who paid, who left. Now they lingered. Talked to Lily about their bikes, their families, their lives. The garage had become a community hub in a way it never had been before. Vera Patterson started bringing over meals twice a week, claiming she'd cook too much and it would just go to waste otherwise. Griff suspected she just wanted an excuse to check on them to make sure Lily was eating enough vegetables and getting to bed at a reasonable hour. That child is too thin, Vera would say, loading their fridge with casseroles and soups. Growing girl needs proper nutrition. Lily would roll her eyes, but Griff noticed she always cleaned her plate. The spring also brought Rachel Winters by for her quarterly check-in. These visits had been tense at first, both Griff and Lily afraid that somehow it would all be taken away, that someone would decide a motorcycle garage wasn't an appropriate place to raise a child. But Rachel had smiled, made notes on her clipboard, and declared everything exemplary. She's thriving, Rachel told Griff during one visit while Lily was at school. Her grades are excellent, she's made friends, she's clearly bonded with you and the community here. Honestly, Mr. Callahan, this is the best case scenario. Griff, just Griff. Griff, then. Rachel tucked her clipboard into her bag. I have to tell you, when I first heard about this arrangement, I had concerns. A single man in his 50s, former biker taking in an unrelated child. It didn't fit the usual profile. But sometimes the best families don't fit profiles. Sometimes they're just people who choose each other. She'd smiled. You two chose each other. That's what matters. After she left, Griff had stood in the garage letting those words sink in. Chosen. Yeah, that was exactly what they'd done. By May, Lily had started asking about getting her motorcycle permit. She wouldn't be old enough to get an actual license for years, but Pennsylvania allowed supervised riding on private property at 12. I've been practicing, she argued, following Griff around the garage like a determined shadow. You said yourself I'm a natural, and I know all the safety protocols. I could recite them in my sleep. That's not the point. Then what is the point? Griff had paused, wrench in hand, trying to figure out how to explain. How to put into words the fear that sat in his chest every time he thought about her on a bike. On the road. Vulnerable. I'm scared, he'd finally admitted, of you getting hurt, of something happening that I can't protect you from. Lily had softened at that. You can't protect me from everything, Dad. And you taught me well. You know you did. Trust that. He did trust it. Trusted her skill, her judgment, her respect for the machine. What he didn't trust was the rest of the world. The cars that didn't check blind spots. The drunk drivers, the random chance that could take someone away in an instant. But he also knew he couldn't wrap her in bubble wrap. Couldn't keep her locked away from every possible danger. So they compromised. Supervised rides only, full gear, always nowhere near public roads. Just around the property, around the industrial park, where the garage sat practicing. Building confidence and skill. The first time Lily took the Honda out solo, Griff's heart had been in his throat. She'd circled the parking lot twice, shifts, smooth, posture, perfect. When she'd pulled back in and cut the engine, her smile had been bright enough to power the whole city. Did you see how smooth that was? I saw. Griff had pulled her into a hug, partly pride, partly relief that she was back in one piece. You did good, kid. Real good. Summer brought long days and a steady stream of customers. The garage had never been busier. Griff had to turn down work for the first time in his life, referring people to other shops because he literally couldn't fit any more hours in the day. We could hire someone, Lily suggested one particularly hectic afternoon, an actual employee, someone to help with the basic stuff so you could focus on the custom work. It wasn't a bad idea. Griff had been doing everything himself for so long he hadn't considered it. But Lily was right. If he had help with oil changes and basic maintenance, he could take on more of the high-end restoration work that he actually enjoyed. They hired a kid named Jake, 22, fresh out of technical school, eager to learn. He reminded Griff of himself at that age, all energy and enthusiasm, wanting to prove himself. Jake fit in immediately, didn't mind taking orders from a 12-year-old when Lily knew more about a particular system than he did, treated the garage with respect, showed up on time, did good work. "You've got an eye for talent," Reaper said, watching Jake work one afternoon. "Kid's got potential." Lily found him actually, saw his work at a bike show, convinced me to give him a shot. Reaper chuckled. "That girl's got more business sense than most adults I know. You realize you're raising a future shop owner, right?" Griff looked over at Lily, who was explaining something about transmission ratios to the Jake, hands moving expressively as she talked. "Yeah," he said, "I realize." The thought didn't scare him like it might have a few months ago. The idea of Lily taking over the garage someday, of carrying on what he'd built. It felt right, like pieces falling into place. August brought Lily's 13th birthday. They'd celebrated with a party at the garage, the whole brotherhood in attendance, plus Lily's friends from school. Emma had been there, of course, along with 3 other girls Lily had bonded with over the school year. Griff had watched them interact, amazed at how normal Lily seemed, how she could shift seamlessly from talking about engine displacement with wrench to giggling about some boy at school with her friends. She contained multitudes, this kid. Could be tough as nails one minute and soft as silk the next. Her birthday present from Griff had been a custom toolbox, full professional setup, each tool engraved with her initials. She cried when she opened it, which had made Griff uncomfortable, until she'd thrown her arms around him and whispered thank you. The Brotherhood had pitched in on a leather jacket like Reaper's with proper patches. Not just a family patch, but one that said Callahan's Custom across the back, marking her as part of the shop, part of the legacy. "You're one of us now," Diesel had said, his voice rough with emotion. "Official." Lily had worn that jacket every day for a month straight, even when the August heat made it impractical. Fall arrived with the scent of wood smoke and dying leaves. Lily started 8th grade already thinking ahead to high school. She wanted to dual enroll at the technical college, taking advanced mechanics courses while finishing her regular schooling. "I want to be certified by the time I'm 18, she explained to Griff over dinner one night. "That way I can officially work in the shop without any legal issues." "You're thinking long-term." "I'm thinking about our future. The shop's future." She'd looked at him seriously. "This is what I want to do, Dad. Not because I feel like I have to, not because it's expected, but because I love it. I love working with my hands. Love seeing a broken thing become whole again. Love that feeling when an engine turns over perfectly after hours of work." Griff had understood completely, because he felt the same way, had for 40 years. "Then we'll make it happen," he'd said. "Whatever you need to make it happen." October came around again, marking a year since Lily had walked into his garage. They didn't make a big deal of the anniversary, but both of them felt it. The weight of everything that had happened, everything that had changed. "Feels like longer than a year," Lily said one evening, sitting on the hood of a car they'd been working on, feet dangling. "Yeah, in a good way, like I can barely remember what it was like before. Before this, before you." Griff sat beside her, their shoulders touching. "I know what you mean." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set through the open garage doors. The world outside was painted in shades of orange and gold, same as it had been that first day Lily arrived. But everything else had changed. The garage wasn't just a workplace anymore. It was home. The Brotherhood wasn't just old friends. They were family. And this girl beside him wasn't just someone he was helping. She was his daughter, his legacy, his reason for everything. "I was thinking," Lily said quietly, "about Mom, about how she'd feel if she could see us now. She'd be proud of you, of the person you're becoming, and of you, for keeping your promise, for giving me the life she wanted me to have." Griff thought about Sandy's letter still tucked away in his desk drawer. He'd read it 100 times over the past year, each time finding new meaning in her words. She'd trusted him with her most precious thing, had faith that a man she'd known for one night would protect her daughter when she couldn't. "I keep my promises," Griff said simply. "I know." Lily leaned her head on his shoulder. "That's what makes you you." The sun dipped below the horizon, leaving them in the comfortable twilight of the garage. Bikes in various states of repair surrounded them. Tools hung on walls. The smell of oil and metal and home filled the air. In the distance, they could hear the rumble of motorcycles. The brotherhood passing by on an evening ride, engines singing their familiar song. A few of them honked as they went past, and Lily waved, even though they probably couldn't see her. "Hey, Dad." "Yeah, kid. Thanks for everything. For taking a chance on some scared kid who showed up out of nowhere. For not turning me away. For loving me even when you didn't have to." Griff's throat felt tight. He wasn't good with words, never had been. But some things needed to be said. "You gave me something too. You know, purpose, family, a reason to be more than I was. So yeah, I love you. But not because I have to. Because you made it impossible not to." They sat there as darkness fell, father and daughter, and watching the stars come out one by one. The garage lights flickered on automatically, casting long shadows across the floor. Tomorrow would bring new work, new challenges, new moments to navigate. But tonight, in this moment, everything was exactly as it should be. Family wasn't about blood. It was about choice, about showing up, about loving someone enough to protect them, teach them, let them grow. Griff had spent 15 years running from who he was. Then Lily had walked into his garage and taught him that sometimes the best version of yourself is the one that emerges when you stop running and start standing still, when you open your heart to someone who needs you as much as you need them. The wolf didn't have to hunt to have purpose. Sometimes protecting the den was enough. Sometimes love was the fiercest thing you could be. And as they sat together in the garage that had become their world, Griff Callahan knew with absolute certainty that every choice he'd made, every risk he'd taken, every moment of fear and doubt had led him exactly where he needed to be. Home. End. Total word count 21,847 words.